Hi everyone, this is Selena Kraus and welcome to another card video. Today I'm showing you the new My Monthly Hero kit for March that is being released today and bunch of card ideas, so please bear with me because I'm showing you a bunch of cards and ideas. This video is longer than usual, it's about 35 minutes, so if you want to stick to the end, you're welcome to. Or if you want to skip to the card ideas, you can go probably somewhere at the half point of this video after I've stamped all the trees, all the images that come in the kit. So first what I'm doing, I'm stamping all of the images, die cutting, and then we're gonna assemble our cards. Right now I'm showing you all the cards that we're making in this video, including the card that I had on the Hero Arts blog on Saturday as a sneak peek from this kit. So let's get started. This kit comes with layering images, and it's like one of the new Heroescapes stamp sets. So the grass, it's layering, and it's kind of landscape. You can just die cut the top, and then you can have the bottom hanging. It's open-ended. So there's a two-step tree, two-step grass. There's little buildings, sand, and little rocks. And also it comes with coordinating dies that cut the grass, the tree trunk, and the little buildings, and the sand patch and the little rocks are very easy to hand cut. So here I'm showing you different ideas for the tree. I stamped in a bunch of different colors. I'm gonna stamp some more. I use shadow inks, also used the Hero Arts Reactive inks. So let's continue here. Next, I'm using the Creamsicle Reactive ink to stamp the treetop. Next, we're going to move to different color. I'm using the Key Lime Fizz here, kind of traditional green color for the tree, compared to the rest that were untraditional. I did a bunch of blue and purple and pinks and orange and yellow. Next we're going with the Tutti Frutti. And I'm stamping it twice on my A2 piece of Dove white cardstock. So next I'm using Thistle. So to save time, I had positioned everything in the Misty, and it's really easy for mass producing. As I mentioned at the end, I'm making a bunch of very simple cards after I show you 5 more involved cards. They include like interactive cards and ink blending and so on. So now we're going to move to the second step of the tree. So those are also very easy to layer. So I'm just positioning on top, picking it up with the lid of the Misty. And then I will stamp with darker colors of ink. For this one, I have Creamsicle and I'm adding Tutti Frutti on top. And I'm doing the same on the other side. So also I use some ombre inks. Now for this one, I'm using Strawberry. For the Tutti Frutti, I'm using Strawberry on top. For darker tone, for that kind of coral red tree. So next for the Key Lime Fizz, I'm using Green Apple. So I'm stamping twice to have nice coverage. Next I'm using the Thistle, and I'm gonna use the Grape Crush Reactive ink. And I'm using also the Grape Crush for the Berry Smoothie. treetop. So next I'm picking a bunch of other colors. I wanted to make sure that I do all the colors, like the blues at the same time, the pinks at the same time, the oranges at the same time. So before I move to the pink on the bottom of underneath this blue tree, I decided to stamp with the blue. Next I'm going to use the berry smoothie for the pink tree, which is taffy. And we're going to stamp the rest. Like for this one I'm using the Grape Slush. This is the Hydrangea Ombre treetop. So now we have all of them stamped. So here are the different colors that I stamped. Some on and some off the camera. So you can see I use Ombre, the hybrid inks, the reactive inks, and the shadow inks, the dye shadow inks. So let's put those aside and move on. So here is the coordinating die to die cut all the treetops. Next we're gonna move to stamping the grass. The grass is also 2-layer stamp. I'm lining it on the bottom, leaving a little space because at the end we're gonna trim that bottom. As I'm gonna trim my panels down to 4 by 5.25, or just like the ones that we have die cut, we'll trim it to width of 4 inches. So I'm stamping with Key Lime Fizz, a reactive ink, and I'm stamping a couple times to have nice coverage. So I'm gonna stamp also those bunch of times, and half of them, well, more than half, I'll end up die cutting, and I'll leave about 5 just the panel with the grass stamped on it. And then we're gonna trim it down to 4 by 5.25. Again, I'm still at the step 1. I'm making sure that the panel is nicely lined up in the corner of my Misty. Okay, skip bunch of panels, and now we're moving to the second step. Again, the grass is very easy to line up. So I'm just positioning it on the panel with the first step stamped, and I'm using green apple reactive ink to stamp that second step. So I'm stamping a couple times to have nice coverage and to have that darker green shade. I'm going to repeat the process for all of the panels. And again, I'm going a couple times. So next we're going to stamp the little buildings and the stones or the rocks. And I'm going to use soft granite shadow ink. And then for the second step, I will use charcoal ink. I'm just putting them down in my mini Misty, picking them up with the lid and stamping a couple times to have nice coverage. As this ink dries, it will lighten in color and it will even out. So we're going to stamp a bunch of those buildings as well, and a bunch of the stones or the rocks. And then we're going to move to the second step and repeat the process. So I think that's good. Now let's move. Those are also very easy to layer. So because they're smaller, I'm kind of going a little bit closer to my Misty to be able to see. Use a snapshot of my head there, trying to see how I'm lining those up. But it's very easy to line up. And next we're going for the largest building, picking it up with the door of the Misty, and I'm using the charcoal shadow ink to stamp that second step. I'm turning my piece of cardstock around and repeating the process. Again, we'll do the same. Turn it around, repeat it. So once we're done with the building and the stones, we can stamp the tree trunk. And I'm using Kappa Joe and Ombre soft brown to dark brown ink. You can use any ink you like, or you can use rock and roll technique to get more depth to the tree trunk, because it's just one layer image. Next we're gonna stamp the sand patch, and I'm using soft brown. And then for the second step, I will use the Kappa Joe and the Ombre soft brown to dark brown ink. Again, we're stamping a bunch of those sand patches, or the sand areas. Again, this one is also very easy to line up. Lining it up on my top of my stamped image, and then I'm using the ombre ink, the brown ombre ink, to stamp that second step. This image doesn't come with coordinating die, but it's very easy to fussy cut because it has very smooth lines, so it's very easy to follow those lines. So we have all of the stamped images now, and let's move to the cards now. So by magic of YouTube, I've already die cut. You can see the little balls on the side with the die cut images. So next I'm we'll make some shadow cards, shadow box cards that were inspired by Jennifer Maguire. She had posted probably a year or two ago some of these on her YouTube channel and her blog. So I'm cutting 2 pieces of white cardstock measuring 5.5 by 6.25, and another piece of Pirate Mist cardstock, the same measurements, 5.5 by 6.25, and then lavender. So I'm just trimming everything to size here, making sure that both top and bottom are equal size and equal length. Sometimes it can be off for a millimeter or like a little smudge. Next, what we'll do, we'll score the 6.25 side, and we're gonna score it 1/2 of an inch and 1 inch, then turn it around and do the same on the other side. Then do a valley fold and then a mountain fold, as you see here in the video. We're gonna repeat the same with all panels. However, the one for the mist, I'll do it at the end because we're gonna stamp the clouds and rainbows, waves and rainbows background on that white, dove white piece of cardstock before we move on to the scoring. So we have the lavender and the mist scored, and I'm using my oval infinity dies. I'm using larger and a smaller that are next to each other in size, and I'm gonna die cut the larger one that I picked out on that front from the lavender and do the same on the mist. I'm making sure it's nice and centered, securing it with some purple tape, or you can use washi tape or any repositionable tape to secure that in place, and repeat the same for the mist. Now by magic of YouTube, we have both of those die cut, and then we're gonna create a layer to go underneath, and to make it sturdier, that front sturdier, using the smaller oval infinity die. I traced that oval on the lavender piece, and I'm using here Amethyst, and used it to position the smaller die. We're going to repeat the same for the Paradise piece, and the pieces of cardstock I used there, they're 4.25 by 5.5, and then I'm trimming it down to 4 by 5.5, so they're nicely they'll be nice inside the card because we have those folds on the sides. So next I'm using my Misty to stamp that background, waves and clouds. And I'm gonna use just this random ink that I had first on hand, the agent, to just for a guide onto my Misty grid paper. Next, I'm positioning the Dove White piece of cardstock there. And I'm gonna stamp using soft pull. I'm gonna stamp a couple times to make sure that it's nice and solid and that I have all the area covered. The main concern is the area in the middle between the score lines, the inside score lines. So I'm stamping the second time and I'm gonna do one more time just to make sure that because the soft pull is very pale ink, I just wanted to make sure that that background is a little bit more visible. So now we can score this piece because we didn't score it before. So I'm scoring in 1.5 at ½ inch and then 1 inch and turning it around, doing it the same thing. Score at ½ inch and then at 1 inch. Next time folding, volley fold and a mountain fold, and the same thing on the other side. So now we can start assembling our card. So we have all the pieces together. Before we move on to adhering, I'm gonna stamp and cut a strip with a sentiment. I'm using Dove White cardstock and one of the sentiments that comes in my monthly hero kit. I'm gonna stamp with intensified black ink from Hero Arts. Then I trimmed it to size. I'm gonna adhere it on the back of the mist panel before I adhere that layer that goes underneath. So that sentiment is sandwiched between both layers of cardstock with the oval die cut on them. I'm adding some liquid adhesive, the Hero Arts Precision Glue, making sure that the edges of that sentiment are parallel with the bottom of our card front. Then I just add a liquid adhesive on the back and adhere that the other frame, and making sure that it's even on all sides. So now we can adhere all the elements. We have the grass, the trees, the little buildings, and so on. So we're gonna trim that grass to 4 inches wide to make sure that a little bit, not to 4, but a little bit, probably 4 1/8, to make sure that it lies nicely between the scored lines. So I'm adding liquid adhesive on the back and adhering that inside that shadow box. Next, I'm picking the colors for the trees I want to use and the tree trunks. I decided to go with Pool Party and with pink. That's Taffy and Berry Smoothie. And the blue tree is Pool Party and Blue Raspberry. So I'm adhering the tree trunks. Because I cut this tree, I'm just adhering them temporarily with some purple tape, just in order so I can adhere the tree trunk there and then cut it in half again. So I'm positioning it here to see how much I need to trim off from that tree. So I'm gonna chop off one end of one tree, and then along the line that was already cut there, I'm cutting the second tree, the pink tree. Next, using foam adhesive, I'll adhere the trees inside. Just removing the liner of that foam adhesive. So I'm starting with the blue tree. And I'm adding the foam adhesive on the pink tree as well. And before I adhere the pink tree, I decided to stamp some of the petals falling off the trees or the blossoms onto the background. And I'm using Pool Party and taffy inks. Both of those inks are the reactive inks from Hues. So we're almost done here. Now I'm gonna adhere the tree. Okay, next I'm adhering the little buildings there. And some of the rocks. Again, I'm using foam adhesive, foam squares. So let's see. So I think this looks pretty good. Now I'm using some adhesive tape on the edge of that fold there, and then on the other edge closer to the outside I'll use liquid adhesive because I wanted to make sure that I have nice and secure adhesion there. And I'll repeat the same thing on the right side. I'm using tape towards the inside of the card, the flap that we're adhering, and then on the outside I'm using the liquid adhesive. You can use wider tape if you like it, or just liquid tape, whatever works for you. Next I decided to add one more tree, kind of larger tree. I used the cutouts from the trees inside to decorate the front, and then I did another piece of the tree for the outside. Just positioning to see where I want them to be and adhering them onto the card front. Then I just add the little building using some foam adhesive. And here's our little shadow box card that fits into a 2 size envelope. Now let's move to the second one. So since you've already seen, this one is a little bit easier. We're gonna start with stamping the sentiment onto that white piece of cardstock and then trim it to sides. And this one says live life in full bloom. So by magic of YouTube, I have already trimmed it out, and then I'm adhering it between the two layers. The front layer, that's Lavender, and then the underneath layer, the matte layer, that's Amethyst. So I'm adhering this one a little bit lower than the first card. So making sure that it's nice and straight. Then we're gonna adhere the matte layer to give us more kind of reinforcement of the front of the card, as well to give us a nice darker purple frame. Next, I mask the sides at the inside score lines, and I'm stamping the petals using the embossing and watermark ink. I'm just covering the entire front with that one stamp. So now we're done here. Next we're going to move to the inside panel, and I'm using the Orchid hybrid ink to do some ink blending for the sky, and I'm starting from the top going towards the middle. Just making sure we have nice transition between the purple and the white. Next we're going to assemble the card inside all the elements. Gonna adhere the trunk of the tree to the treetop and let it dry. While we adhere the grass, I decided to add a little bit more ink there, make it a little bit darker on the top. So I think that's pretty nice. I'm adhering the grass. Then I'm gonna stamp the petals from the tree using the Grape Slush reactive ink. And don't worry if you go off the scored lines, because those will be adhered to the other layer and they won't really be visible. Next, I added also the scent. I'm creasing those score lines nicely using my bone folder, adding one of the tiny buildings there next to the tree. And next we're gonna adhere both sides the outer flaps. Again, the same tape and liquid adhesive. On the inner side, I'm using the tape, the adhesive tape, and the outer side I'm using the liquid adhesive. I'm gonna press that nicely using the bone folder, and we're gonna repeat the process on the other side. I'm gonna remove the backing, add one more piece on the top where it didn't reach the previous one because I cut it too short. Then we're gonna adhere those flaps together. Next, we're gonna decorate the front. I'm adding another tree or chopped up tree and lining it up with the scored line on the left side. I'm repeating the same on the right. And then I'll add few of the stamped stones using some foam adhesive. So here's our second card. So here are both shadow box cards. So let's now move to more simple cards. Here we're going to be using some ink blending to create the sky. Here I'm just deciding which colors I wanted to use, and I'm using a blending brush and Summer Sky hybrid ink to blend from top towards the bottom. Again, leaving a nice transition, making nice transition between the white and the blue. I'm adhering the grass. Gonna stamp the Thinking of You using the intensified black ink, and I'm using my Mini Misty. I'm stamping the petals, both in Pool Party and Rose Madder. Next, I'm gonna adhere the trees, the sand, and I'm adhering the little stones and the little building using foam adhesive. Once I'm done, I'm using Fun Foam to adhere that layer onto top folding white note card. Now let's move to the second card. For this one, the grass is stamped directly onto my panel. It's not die cut, and I'm using blending brushes to blending some inks to create night sky. So I'm using navy shadow ink, which is dye-based ink. Then I'm using blue Hawaii reactive ink and Grape Slush reactive ink. I'm starting with the darkest, going to the lighter blue, and then on the bottom where the grass meets the skyline, I'm using the Grape Slush ink, and then adding some more, blending everything together, sprinkling with water, then with white iridescent shimmer spray, just using that cap to spray. Then I'm adding some sea salt reactive ink. I just smudged some onto acrylic block, and I'm splattering using a paintbrush that's already wet. I'm adding some more starts using white gel pen, and also remove the mask because we're done. So the white gel pen adds a little bit brighter white speckles onto the background. Next, I'm using pink tree and adhere the trunk to the treetop. I'm stamping the Thank You sentiment using Versamark, not Versamark, but embossing and watermark ink. I'm adding some white embossing powder and heat setting it with my heat tool. Next, I'll adhere the tree using dimensionals or foam adhesive and two of the little buildings. And then using Fun Foam, I'm going to adhere it to a top folding white note card. So now let's move to the third ink blending sample. So here we're again using the masking technique, and I'm going to start with the summer sky, but however this time I'm starting from the grass going above, where in the previous or two samples before we started from the top going to the bottom. So I'm just picking out which trees I want to use, which colors, and adhering the tree trunks to the tree tops using liquid adhesive. Here, since I already had one trimmed up, I used the bottom, the blue one, as a guide to make sure that I'm adhering the tree trunks on the same place on all trees. Though that doesn't really matter. You can adhere them wherever you want, but I just wanted them to be exactly the same. Next, we're gonna adhere them onto our panel. And I'm using liquid adhesive for the first one and then dimensionals for the second and the third tree. Before I adhere that last tree, I'm stamping the thank you sentiment from the kit using intensified black ink and then adhering the last tree. Next, I'm using fun foam to adhere it to a top folding white note card. So next, because I stamped so many tree tops and other elements from the kit, I'm just making quick cards that I can have on hand to send to friends and family. So I'm making 9 of those, and I'm gonna move really quick here. Just adhering the one that I had die cut grass for. I'm adhering it to a 4 by 5 1/4 panel, and the rest the one that the grass was stamped directly onto the panel and not die cut, I trimmed down to 4 by 5 1/4. Next, I'm gonna stamp some petals and sentiments. I'm using 3 different sentiments because I'm doing 3 cards, so 3 of each. Thinking of you, thank you, and stop and smell the blossoms. So I'm moving pretty quickly here. I'm stamping in my Mini Misty using Hero Arts Black Intensified ink. Next, I'm moving to stamping the petals on all of the cards. Here I'm lining up that second on top to have like nicer coverage. Next, we are doing with the Creamsicle. Grape Slush. I apologize here, I'm a little bit off the camera. So next we're gonna adhere all the trees to our cards and then add fun foam on the back and adhere to our top folding dove white note cards. So I'm quickly adhering them here, and you can see all the cards, all the card fronts, what they did, and the colors used. And I still ended up with a bunch of leftover elements that I can use later on when I need a card in a hurry. So we have all of them done now, and then I'm adhering the rest of the elements, the little scent patch or the scent bar, for the lack of better name, and the little buildings and the stones. Again, I'm using either liquid adhesive, the Hero Arts Precision Glue, or some fun foam. So let's go back to all the cards we created today. So here are both shadow cards, shadow box cards, and they fit it with in A2 envelope. Those are the ink blended cards, and this is the card that I had on the Hero Arts blog. So next, move to the quick cards that we just made, and those took like less than half an hour to assemble everything together, and we made like 9 cards. So that's all for today. I thank you for hanging out with me for this pretty long video, and I hope that you're inspired and you have even more ideas floating in your head right now how to use this kit. And don't forget to click the subscribe button to subscribe to my YouTube channel, so you get notifications for more ideas and inspiration as well. Don't forget to visit my blog, link in this blog in the description of the video, for more ideas and inspiration. Thanks for watching, and see you soon in another video. Bye!